One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. Welcome everyone again to another episode of Sneaks, Rhymes, and Life. I am your host, Lionel McDonald. Lots happening in the world. I know it's a long weekend in Toronto, but we are going to dive into one of my favorite albums. This album has stuck with me since its inception, and we'll get into a little story about this album when I get a chance later in this episode. But we're going to Brooklyn, at least virtually or mentally, um, and we are going to talk about an album. Actually, today is its 27th anniversary, and that would be the hip hop classic. At least from an underground standpoint, Jeru The Damaja's debut album, Sunrises in the East. So this album was literally exclusively produced by DJ Premier, and they were both part of the Gangstar Foundation. I know things are kind of been up and down over time between Jeru and DJ Premier, but that's another story. Hopefully, we'll get into a little bit later. But so Jeru's from Brooklyn. I think he's now living in like Germany, or at least has a house there. But myself as well as many people first heard Jeru on um on the Gangstar albums, their third album, um, Daily Operations. He's on a track. It's a pretty cool track. It's a very unique concept that they came up with. It's called I'm the Man. Um, so Preemo did three beats. There's three MCs on it, all from the Gangstar Foundation, Guru, um, Little Dap, and obviously Jeru, as we're talking about today. And he did three different beats for each guy, or did a beat differently for each guy. So it has a very unique flow. It's almost like a segmented song. But that's the first time we heard him. He's got the last verse, which in those days was very, very important. It's kind of who you're pushing forward, or who you really wanted to highlight in the song. Much like you hear Scenario and you hear Busta Rhymes, and that was kind of his awakening to a solo career, literally, as he had that final verse in Scenario on that Tribe Called Quest album. But that's the first time we heard him. We've heard him on other Gangstar records, but we now get to the point, and that happened in 91, 92 is when I heard it. So I was still in like high school, and remember I got a dub tape of it, and I thought it was just, who is this guy? This guy sounds dope. So fast forward a couple years later, and we heard this song called Come Clean. It was like a 90s anthem. uh it was like Jeru spitting in this almost slow flow, but he was witty, he was scientifical, he definitely had the knowledge of self. um and the beat was like Preemo did the beat. It's like I remember I had to find the single. So who produced there was no Wikipedia or Google or anything to check out. That you had to go get the album, you had to go search through the album credits and see who produced it. And sure enough, DJ Premier produced it. I still have the single over there. So a lot of buzz was about this song, and people were on it, and including myself. And then I also then remember eventually hearing, and I think I read it in the source because the source was the Bible of hip hop at the time, that album was coming out. And remember going to Scarborough Town Center. I heard that this album was going to be on Payday Records. I didn't even know what Payday, there was Loud and Def Jam and so many other labels by Payday Records. I ain't never heard of it, but hopefully they was hoping for a good product. I went to Scarborough Town Center and I bought the album, and there was no CDs even at this point. Well, not the least that I had. I was still in tape mode, so I had my little Sony Walkman, and I got this tape. I unwrapped it as I'm walking through out of the town center and across so I could go back home. And I still remember when I hit play on that tape and I get to the first song, and I think the first song is the original, and the piano break was like it literally made me stop in my tracks. And it's like, what am I hearing? How did they sample this and think this would be a good song? But it's crazy. And then we get into and then we get into Brooklyn Took It, which is just, a stand-up Brooklyn song. Again, obviously a lot of borough pride, many people call Queens the champion borough, but I know the guys that are in Manhattan or Staten Island where Wu-Tang's from, many of them anyways, and or you talking about the Bronx, or where hip hop started, or you're talking Brooklyn. Everyone had pride, and this kind of really elevated the game of hip hop in the '90s. That New York, really had this renaissance in the '90s. Between OC and Boot Camp and Wu Tang, obviously Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul. You get into Nas and Biggie and Jay. So New York was standing up at this point. But this posse cut was, or not posse cut, but this cut, second song on the album, um was definitely high energy, and I still play it to this day. Then we got into the third song, and this is probably where I literally, in this little park walkway to get to the roads across the street till I can get to where my street is to go home. And I remember, Afu Ra, shout out to Afu. He is on track 3 called Mental Stamina. And two obviously very intelligent artists in Jeru and Afu, because they spit like I've never heard words that, like, these complex syllable words that rhyme together, and it made sense. Like, I remember I had to rewind, like, and again, like, we're got a Walkman here, we're winding and playing it again, and and the album was it was crazy. Like, again, like, one of the unique things about this album is that DJ Premier has done Gangstar album, or that was the third Gangstar album we had heard. I think actually we got to the fourth Gangstar album prior to this, which was Hard to Earn, and then we got to this album. He then did, he's done stuff for Nas. He's done stuff for and Illmatic was still bumping at the time. Illmatic had only come out like a month prior. Um, so Illmatic was the talk of the hip hop world, but this album like came out of nowhere and put a lot of people on notice. But DJ Premier has had this way of taking an MC and creating beats that fit that particular artist, and then in all of the work that DJ Premier has ever done, maybe the best produced album is Group Home, because the beats are absolutely bananas. But the best crafted album for one artist is probably this one, Sunrise in the East, for Jeru The Damaja. So, as there was a lot of buzz on this album, it got 4 to 5 mics from the source. But the song that really kind of rubbed a lot of people was The Bitches. Um, and in Jeru's thought process, mindset, he really wanted to talk about, you know, beautiful women he was trying to pay homage to, but the way that he did it, he kind of went at some people that were gold diggers or didn't treat their man right, or were just, you know, call it the evils if I'm another Brooklyn term. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, like including most notably, he really kind of got into a beef over this song with none other than the Fugees, who were never really, you know, known for getting into altercations with people. But yeah, there was controversy with the Fugees. They didn't like him, and um, on the score, they have a track or two that they take some jabs at Jeru, and then Jeru does return fire on the Wrath of the Math. So very interesting, you know, Didi, I think for Jeru, if you're talking about and the saying that is no publicity is bad publicity. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think bad publicity is definitely bad, but if when you're building a name for yourself, you know, it can happen that bad publicity actually works out in your favor. Hey, think about it. The first time we got to know Kim Kardashian was not because of good publicity, not because she was, doing a whole bunch of great things for, you know, some nonprofit organization, it was a sex tape scandal, but that's another story. Um, but he got into it was a lot of backlash that Jeru got into when it came to this particular album. And this particular song. So there were interviews, almost rap pages um to the source, etc., all talked about this album and how this song and how people felt about it. So definitely got his name out there, but I think the music ultimately did speak for itself. And if you really take it in and listen, he is trying to make a point that is not negative but positive. Then I think one of the next up was one of the most interesting tracks is "Can't Stop the Prophet," and actually this is one of the jabs that the Fugees take. They call him a false prophet because he calls himself a prophet, and he talks about all the evils of the world, but he gives them names, and almost in a story like setting, he talks about the evils and how he's trying to defeat these hatred, jealousy, and envy as three of them that kind of come off the top of the dome. Um, so this is maybe the only time, and I love DJ Premier. DJ Premier is my favorite producer all time. He's probably the second most influential person to me in hip hop, in to my personal hip hop journey, other than Nas. Um, and I think it's almost debatable, like how much I like DJ Premier, but I never heard anyone do a remix to a song better than a Preemo original. And it happened in this particular setting where, and I do love what Pete Rock did. Pete Rock flipped this beat. And if it's going to be someone elite that can flip a beat that sounds better to me, Pete Rock, Dilla, um, we're talking about Dr. Dre, et cetera, et cetera. Like he flips this beat and it sounds incredible. And it fits the story and even the video probably better than Premo's version of it. And again, that was the original. E-Rock had time to take in the song and create a beat that sounded dope. So, anyways, it is an amazing, amazing track, and very, very clever. So, like the wordplay and the story that it's painting in your mind, and then you see it in a cartoon form. It's dope. So then three of the, we got four songs left. We got My Mind Spray, amazing sample, the sound effects in the background, crazy, and then Jeru goes in hammer time on the verses. Come Clean is the song that everyone remembers. It's still played to this day. Um, and then we get to another, like the backdrop for this song, production wise, this is where things really start to stand out. And this is almost like the one of the two highlights for me, and sounding something like I've never heard. And this would be jungle music. So it literally, Jeru does his rhyme cadence, his flow, his scientifical madness type lyricism, which is dope. But the the actual backdrop, it sounds like Jeru's rapping in a jungle. It's so amazing to hear. Um, so one of my, again, personal favorites to that. And then we get to one of the most unique beats. Like this was like the cementing how amazingly produced this album was. Um, and it is Static. So so Jeru again, you know, great lyricism on the song, and this combination, like I think these guys could have been their own duo moving forward. Like, and you've seen Preemo connect with other artists. You've seen the amazing stuff he's done with Royce the 5'9". Clearly, he's done amazing stuff in his Gangstar catalog with Guru. Rest in peace, Guru. But the way that he flips this beat, and it sounds like static from a record, but he loops it, and the uh, the drum cadence is it's like mind blowing how dope this sounds. So um I think if we think about how good this album, the production is amazing. You can see that, like Wu-Tang, Saturday martial arts movies, Kung Fu Fix in particular. Um, Jeru was heavily influenced. His vocabulary is like second to none and off the charts. And then his wordplay is very, very, very clever. And the concepts that he creates for this album is just totally dope. He's definitely a righteous man, 5%er. And really that is heavily influenced to what he believes and what he rhymes about in terms of his topics. But one of the great things about this album, and you can play this one front to back, no skips, no interlude skips, no nothing, because it fits together like a story. Um, is how consistent he is lyrically and how consistent DJ Premier is. Um, on the production side. So this is a time again, Nas, Biggie, Tribe, Black Moon, all hitting right now. And Jeru fits right in there, just like OC did later on that year. And album is totally dope and totally incredible. It was this album, it didn't win any awards. It didn't, win a Grammy or a or any hip hop awards like BET or anything like that. But when we talk about lyricism, Jeru's verse on Mental Stamina I talked about with Afu. Again, it's like a next level verse. It was the rhyme of the year. And if you think of all the amazing albums that came out that year, I just quickly thinking in my head, um, we had Gangstar Hard to Earn, we had Illmatic, we had Ready to Die, we had Tikal, we had Brooklyn Zoo, we had Dark Side Joint by Redman. This was the verse of the year, and all those guys are spitting heavy spitters. But that was the rhyme of the year was that verse on Mental Stamina. So it's funny, I've seen Jeru multiple times, and um, I truly appreciate, I've had some funny stories, the times that I've, not necessarily engaged him, but seen him or just the people I was with. So, I remember one time, my friend got really sick at a Jeru Roots and Rascats concert, at Opera House. And that was at a crazy, crazy show. And then, because I think that was right around when Jeru, first album was already out, and then Wrath of the Math had just come out, so there was a lot of that album that was played. Um, and then also, I went to this like mini concert like on Front Street way back. I want to say it's like, oh, I think I can remember the date. It would have been uh, December 30th, 2005. Um, and why do I remember? I went with a friend of mine and her brother and my brother. little small place, probably like 25 people there. It was a tiny little stage, probably no higher than this desk. And he performed. He did Wrath and Math, but almost the entire Sunrise in the East album. And no, we were all hanging out. We were all cool, but the person that I was with was also a very, very big Jeru fan. So was her brother, and that would be my wife, Catherine. That's one of the many reasons how we connected was through hip hop. When we first became friends, actually we worked at the same place. That's how it started. But then we became friends, and then ultimately dated, engaged, married. Uh, in a span of 15 years. But yeah, I remember that we were all kicking at the show, and I won't get into all the details, but yeah, there was it was I still remember. It's like I had this like epiphany moment that night, and it's like you know why why do why are Kath and I just friends? Like, she's so incredible and still is. Um, but there might be something there for us. So yeah, so that's why this album in my mind kind of really sticks out, because that was the night that I had this epiphany moment that Catherine and I should be dating, and rest is history. 15 years later, well, history behind us, but lots more wonderful years to go. So again, this album is a true masterpiece. He definitely did do, other albums, so that Heroes Joint, Divine Design, Still Rising, but none of those really was able to capture the magic of sunrises in the East. And that's one of the unique things about sometimes an early album, you're never able to duplicate it. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes those albums, in the span of time, and I think OC said it to me even before, like the competition level was so high in 92 to like 96 or 7 pocket. And not that it's not competitive now, it is. Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick ever want to come back with them? It's competitive now, but like this was what got us to today, was the Nas and Biggie's and Tupac's and J. Ru's and Dog Pound and Wu Tang and Souls of Mischief, et cetera, et cetera. So, Outkast is definitely part of that equation. So that there was a lot of competition, and you had to really come with it, particularly in New York. Nas, Jay, Biggie, Wu Tang, Black Moon, like those guys really pushed the envelope. De La Tribe Called Quest pushed that envelope to like a start. And like if you didn't come with it, your album would have been a flop. That you would be compared. It's just like, you've fallen off. So, it pushed the greatness out of people, and even people that had a shorter career. They definitely came out with great music in that time frame. So that's Sunrise and East, an absolute masterpiece when we talk about hip hop. And if you haven't checked it, you haven't listened to it a while, it's 27th anniversary today. I suggest you listen. It's pretty amazing. Um, so for another episode of Sneaks, Rhymes, and Life, we have come to an end. Appreciate all the love and support. Hopefully my Knicks bounce back in game two, because just didn't have what it took on the defensive end to get it done. We played our pace for a long period of time in that game, and then we kind of let it get away from us in the very end. So on to game two. It's great to see the Garden rocking and see people back in New York, but this is going 7, and Knicks will win in 7 because we'll have it in the Garden. So thanks again for listening to Sneaks, Rhymes, and Life. On that note, peace.